Welcome everyone to Dropkick DiSKussions presented by Sportskeeda. I'm Korey Gunz along with wrestling insider Tom Colohue. And Tom, it's been another eventful week in wrestling. Seems like we're saying that a lot these days, but it seems like every couple of days wrestling business is giving us something new and interesting to talk about.
Well, there's a lot of wrestling. There has been for a long time, but there's more now than ever. There's major network changes. There is a lot going on, and it might be a long time before it starts to settle down again.
Yeah, I got to agree with you there. And let's start right with Monday Night Raw, kind of our Raw reaction for this past week. A couple of big things to make note of. Biggest of all probably is the push or up to the upper echelon of the card that we're apparently seeing with Buddy Murphy. He's been in a weeks-long feud with Aleister Black, and they've been putting on some great matches, match of the week, match of the night, every night on Raw for about the past month. But at the conclusion of Raw this past Monday, we saw him join forces with Rollins and the Authors of Pain, so aligning himself with, what is viewed as the top heel faction over on Monday Night Raw. What do you make of this push by Buddy Murphy? Not only that he was finally getting some spotlight, in the ring with his feud with Aleister Black, but I'm not sure, myself included, anyone saw this coming, that he would then join forces with the top heels, the top group on Raw in Seth Rollins and the AOP, and essentially cement his spot in the main event scene of the Red Brand.
I'm really happy with this decision, personally. I know that Heyman was very excited about getting Buddy Murphy. That's one of the names that he was saying, oh, come on, give him to me. I'll do great things with him, give him to me. And Black and Murphy have both been told for a few weeks now, just go out there, do your thing, let us worry about telling a story. And that's exactly what they've done. They've gone out, had good wrestling matches, they've let the writers do their thing. It's one of those storylines where I don't think the writers are getting any real credit, but they've done something subtle but very meaningful. Black has had convincing wins, and yet it's still Buddy Murphy we're talking about right now. That's important. That shows how cleverly they've done it. And when you consider, Heyman always had this talent for putting stories together. Not one story, but several stories in intricate little layers whereby this storyline impacts that storyline. When Buddy Murphy was sat on the outside, you kind of forgot he was there, even though they had the little interview. And it was just clever that he had the opportunity to help out Seth Rollins. Seth Rollins is a weasel heel. He always has been. It's fantastic to see. So him going, Buddy, help. And then when Buddy does help, he gets rewarded for it. It's a great spot to be in. And it shows when they tell you wins and losses don't matter. Buddy Murphy had 3 losses and he's still hotter than the guy who beat him 3 times in a row.
Yeah, it's definitely a story where, like you said, where the guy that, even though he's losing in the ring, has probably gotten himself over more than anybody in the past couple weeks. And like you said, then leads to this, joining of forces and really aligning himself with the top group. I thought it was interesting as well, and somebody pointed out on Twitter, and I hadn't really thought about it, that this is really the first time in a while that a top stable in WWE has been a larger number of guys. Has really been more than a threesome. We've seen the New Day, we've seen the Shield, we've seen the Wyatt family for a while was just a group of 3. Even Evolution, for a while when it was Triple H, Batista, and Orton, just those 3 guys. It's been a while since we've seen a 4 horsemen-esque stable, or really a group that's been any bigger than 3 guys. And, it seems like they're going forward with this foursome, maybe even adding some more guys down the road leading into WrestleMania. Who knows? But, it's interesting to see them going with a larger heel group. And I think that can only benefit because that seems to make for easy storytelling when you can just feed a bunch of baby faces, some of the guys from the top heel group, and it just makes for easy matchmaking and storytelling.
Yeah, it has been a while since we've had a group of anything larger than 3. And you think back to heydays of the Attitude Era, where you had the Nation of Domination, you had DX. They were very large stables. DX was a 5. The Nation was 5 or 6, depending on what was going on at the time. So there's good story to tell. And the way they did this is very much a Paul Heyman stable. You always have the leader and the vocal leader at the top. And then it's important that you don't have anyone else on his level. Buddy Murphy is nowhere near Rollins' level. He will benefit so much from association with Rollins. Same with AOP. They will benefit from association, from Rollins' charisma, from Rollins talking. They will benefit from that. Now, I don't personally see this faction lasting particularly long. At WrestleMania, we're probably going to see Authors of Pain against the Viking Raiders. Seth Rollins' match isn't set in stone right now because the company do want to leave it open just in case CM Punk does make that phone call. Rollins is the opponent they would rather have him face. Or it could be we end up with Rollins versus Murphy if that phone call isn't made. So this faction could implode pretty much at any time. I am hoping it goes for a while longer. I am hoping at some point they hold quite a lot of gold. But really, you cannot lose. All four men are going to benefit, and I do agree we will probably add at least one more in the build-up to WrestleMania.
Well, speaking of gold, the WWE Champion Brock Lesnar was on Raw for the second week in a row, which is a little bit of a surprise or something that you don't see a lot, especially when it's not WrestleMania season. As we're leading up to WrestleMania, I'm sure he'll be on the show more and more, but he was on the show for the second week in a row. And I really want to talk about two things here. First of all, being after Raw and here recently, Cain Velasquez has officially announced himself as being part of the Royal Rumble. Now that's interesting because there's a lot of thought that whoever ends up eliminating Brock Lesnar from the Royal Rumble, assuming of course that he doesn't win, but everybody seems pretty assured that Lesnar will end up being eliminated at some point, and whoever eliminates him would make for the easy opponent to set him up with at WrestleMania. There was speculation that maybe that could be Cain Velasquez, maybe in a surprise appearance, but now Velasquez has officially announced that he will be at Royal Rumble and he will be part of the Rumble match itself. I'll ask you this first because I get in the habit of asking a bunch of questions at once, so I'm going to try and pace myself here.
You do.
So I'm going to pace myself. So would the betting line money be that Cain Velasquez is in fact the one to eliminate Brock Lesnar, or could the fact that he's officially entered in the Rumble be a little bit of a red herring that may show that because everybody's going to call it, he won't be the one to eliminate Lesnar?
It's hard to say as to the betting line because the betting line has been strongly in the favour of Cain Velasquez winning the Rumble for a while. I believe it's the third favourite after Roman Reigns and someone who doesn't work for the company in CM Punk. So betting lines aren't always the best thing to contend with, although Edge is now a contender, despite clearly saying he would not be in the Rumble. So the betting line, I'm not entirely sure. When it comes to red herrings, I think they're actually being quite clever here. I believe I said this last week. Roman Reigns is such a dead cert to win that Brock Lesnar is the red herring. When it comes to eliminating, I do think Cain Velasquez is being set up for that, and I'm going to explain why I believe that. The segment this week with Brock Lesnar was designed for a singular purpose. The reason he was here this week was to further that singular purpose, and that is to get as much heat as possible on Brock Lesnar. Because the more you hate someone, the more you cheer when they are eliminated from the Rumble. And it gets to a point where I want you to think back to, I think it was the 2017 Royal Rumble, when Roman Reigns came in at number 30. And everyone was furious. And the reason they did that was because you had big names like The Undertaker, like Goldberg, like Brock Lesnar in that match. And it was Randy Orton who would be winning it, who felt a level below. They wanted to ensure Randy Orton got a nice pop. So they built up Roman as a massive heel going into that match, so that when he was eliminated, everybody cheered. Easy to do with Roman Reigns at the time. That is exactly what I think is going to happen this time. Cain Velasquez has been the favourite to take on Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania for a while now. It's a storyline that they want to tell. There was originally supposed to be a Velasquez versus Lesnar match at the Rumble. They've now pushed that back due to unavailability of someone else, or maybe Tyson Fury not picking it up as quickly as they wanted. There's a lot of possibilities. Cain Velasquez is almost a cert at this moment to enter the Rumble after Lesnar has thrown out some fan favourites, built up a load of hatred. He's the most likely to throw him out, but I don't think the WWE are going to get the pop that they want.
I'm glad you mentioned Lesnar's segment on Raw this week, because that was leading into my next question. And this is just one fan's point of view, but I thought that his interaction with R-thruth was probably the most entertaining 5 minutes on the show this week.
Oh, I loved it. I loved it.
Right? I mean, awesome. And I know that a lot of that credit goes to R-thruth, that, the guy, anything he does is entertaining and is going to get, good pops, and he's just an entertaining guy. Whatever you throw at him, he's going to make it good. But to me also, Brock's interaction with him, at the end, the what's up at the end, and even going back to his boombox Brock gimmick when he had the Money in the Bank briefcase, was probably the most entertaining that Brock has been in a long time. So if it's in fact that Cain Velasquez wins the Rumble, or maybe he's just the guy to eliminate Brock and that is in fact the WrestleMania main event, if Lesnar continues to be this entertaining, or at least is put in the ring with entertaining people that make him seem more interesting and fan-friendly, could Brock Lesnar be the face going into the main event of WrestleMania against Velasquez or whoever it may be? I mean, it seems like he's getting the crowd more on his side with what he's doing lately than he's ever been.
That is a good question. The WWE audience are not behind Cain Velasquez. They're just not. There is no interest in seeing that match. But when it comes to this particular segment, and I think I also need to do a shout out for Paul Heyman, who played his part magnificently. But this segment, the idea was to get heat and to make him more hated. And on some level, it did completely fail because of how effective it was. It was so well put together. Heyman was just going on a rant. The truth will set you free, and out comes R-thruth. And it was the most unexpected thing. And then the whole segment happened, and I was so happy. And seeing Brock crying with laughter was just... Lesnar's reaction face. Truth says, you're not in the Rumble. No, I'm not in the Rumble. What's the matter with you? Just off mic. It was beautiful. And yeah, little moments like Brock Lesnar looking down and saying, what's up? The crowd really got into it. They really enjoyed it. And I know, obviously, you track my tweets quite stringently, as it were. So you'll probably remember my excitement over Boombox Brock.
Yeah,
it was
absolutely
almost offensively entertaining. It was amazing. He could very easily end up in a position like The Miz, where people just want to cheer him. And we know the WrestleMania crowds are smarky anyway. They're more like UK crowds in that regard. If you're good, they'll cheer you. It doesn't matter whether you're face or heel. You'll get cheers. Brock Lesnar's in such a happy place right now. He's really enjoying working with Paul Heyman. And he's able to be more creative, to express himself. He's not being told, go out there and be stoic. He's being told, go out there and play your part, but you can be you. And Brock is a fun-loving guy. He's enjoying the matches, he's enjoying the opponents, and I think he's quite looking forward to the Royal Rumble, to be honest.
It's definitely be interesting to track, and I think, we've said it before, and we'll talk more about it, I'm sure, next week when we do our Rumble preview show, but this is probably the most interesting Rumble match we've had in a while, just because you can't call what's going to happen. Could it be Velasquez or Roman Reigns, maybe some of the more predictable outcomes? Are they going to go a different direction because those two guys are so predictable? It's going to make for an interesting card. The Royal Rumble is always one of my favorite pay-per-views of the year, and I'm actually getting pretty excited for this one.
Yeah, and that's great. That's the hope, isn't it? Royal Rumble is always one of those matches that you really get hyped for, and it's not just as fans. We spoke with Tyler Bate over the weekend, and the Royal Rumble is one of the matches he was really interested in getting into. The same as for him, maybe less, more surprising, I should say, for people, was the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal for Tyler, which confused me a little more. But with the Royal Rumble, it's one of those dream matches, and for everyone involved, it's so entertaining, it's so different, it's such a unique format. And even though I am certain Roman Reigns is going to win, there are so many beautiful red herrings. You've seen what's going on with Drew McIntyre. Brock Lesnar is now involved, and you can never rule him out. I obviously believe wholeheartedly that Rusev is a serious contender. He will definitely have a huge part to play, win the Royal Rumble, defeat Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania, and the era of Rusev will begin. So there are so many exciting options that we can have, and that's just in the men's match. The women's match is not so cut and dry.
Well, let's talk about that women's Rumble. Around Rumble time, we always get rumors and stirrings up of people that maybe they're going to return at the Rumble. We always get those surprise spots in the Rumble match, both men's and women's. As you alluded to, CM Punk is kind of the number one name that people probably are, with wishful thinking, want to return at the Rumble. But two names that we heard about this weekend were Edge for the men's Rumble and then Paige for the women's Rumble match. Both of those were rumored returns. And then actually this past weekend, our own Gary Cassidy had a great interview with Triple H. And if you haven't been following Gary lately, he's killing it with the interviews that he's getting and the guest spots. He's got a really interesting bus interview with a plethora of superstars that he had just today. So if you're not following him, make sure you're checking out his stuff. But he got an interview with Triple H this past weekend in the UK where Triple H addressed the futures or the rumors, I should say, about the returns of both of those, and basically alluded to that it would come down to medical clearance, that he would be all for if Edge and Paige, either one, personally wanted to return, he would be all for that, but of course it would come down to if they would get medically cleared to do so. Edge has gone on record and said that he is not returning. Paige herself has not turned those rumors down. I know that her mother has actually gone on Twitter and refuted those rumors. What can you tell us about either of these superstars making any type of return? Again, are they just trying to throw us off the scent? Have you heard anything about what their medical clearance might be? What could you tell us just about Edge and Paige as far as their potential return to the ring?
Well, I will say that when it comes to Paige, she has confirmed that she will be in the Royal Rumble. In fact, she'll be in both the men's and female Royal Rumble. She'll eliminate Brock Lesnar, and in her words, she will main event WrestleMania against The Fiend. So I think a lot of what's going on right now can be taken with a pinch of salt. Everyone's having a bit of fun and enjoying themselves. Triple H, in his answer, I was in the room myself, so I was part of that roundtable discussion. When he was answering, he was trying to make it very clear, yes, it is down to medical clearance and the medical health and personal well-being of the wrestlers in question, these being Paige and Edge, is the first and foremost consideration. And I think that's something the fans need to realise. There is also a sort of logistical issue in that, let's say Paige enters the Women's Royal Rumble. If she doesn't win, the entire event is moot because everyone is booing that match. If Edge enters the Men's Royal Rumble, let's say he's thrown over the top rope by Brock Lesnar, immediately gets an F5 in a way that means he can land on his feet, bend his knees, take the bump on his bum, essentially. You think anyone's cheering after that? You think anyone's cheering Cain Velasquez after that? Look what happened with Daniel Bryan. He wasn't in the match, so everyone just booed Batista. He was in the match the next year. He'd just come back from a major injury. He was in for a couple of minutes, eliminated very carefully by Bray Wyatt. And that was the beginning of the end for that Rumble. That ended, of course, with Roman Reigns winning and the reaction to that. They cannot just throw people in. It's why, going back to the 2017 match, it's why they didn't put Samoa Joe in that, even though he debuted the next night, because he would have debuted on such an upward curve that you can't then have him eliminated. You have to be careful in these matches. Surprise returns. Let's look at Edge's last big surprise return. He won. Let's look at John Cena's last surprise return. He won. When you get surprise returns like that, they either win or it's a ridiculous concept that they would. So there are many reasons why I don't think it's happening, as well as backstage news that makes it clear Paige, at least, is definitely not going to be in the Royal Rumble. They're not so clear as regards Edge, but I still don't believe he will be there.
Now, in that same interview, Triple H made a joke about Paige, basically in reference to, he was mentioning that, he wanted these, speaking of Edge and Paige, that he wanted them to be able to live healthy lives outside of the ring and be able to have children, and made a remark that, Paige may have some children that she doesn't even know about right now. Obviously was making the comment in jest, but it didn't necessarily go over well with all fans, and it doesn't seem like it went over particularly well with Paige herself. Now, Triple H has come out on Twitter and apologized to Paige. He said that he's reached out to Paige since then and, apologized for the remark and if it offended her, and apologized to anyone else that it may have offended. Was this just, maybe Triple H, again, he's a wrestler. He's one of the boys. He's got a corporate position now, but he started as, a member of that locker room. So is this just maybe a situation of Triple H maybe letting his personal relationships and the way that he can interact with, some of the guys and girls behind the curtain, maybe letting that leak out a little bit too much, in front of the cameras while in his corporate position?
It's always a bit nerve-wracking as wrestling media to go into a situation like this. So it's a media roundtable, but ultimately you're sat there, you're opposite Triple H, and I was a huge fan of Triple H growing up. I got a picture with him because I was a huge fan growing up, and I'm still a huge fan now. I'm still that kid. So I can understand that from our point of view, and I think it's the case from his point of view as well. You don't know what you're going to get asked. It's a nerve-wracking situation, and in many ways, you do try and build a rapport based on how you would normally build a rapport. For him, that's cracking a couple of jokes. It was undoubtedly intended as a joke, and you can see from the reaction that it was a joke. Now, I'm sure afterwards he started to question himself whether he should have said it. When it came to examining the footage, Gary, when he puts that up, he's not going to edit that joke out. He can't. That would be disingenuous. It would be him hiding something. And ultimately, whether it's pro or anti from Paige, you can't hide it. It was said. It is what it is. So while I think in many ways Triple H will have been trying to answer as best he could and trying to build that rapport and engage with people and eliminate maybe a bit of tension that was in the room, it wasn't a good joke. You can tell by the laughter afterwards. I personally was not one of the ones laughing, but it didn't really connect. And I think everyone knows why. I'm sure he realized afterwards Paige responded in the way she responded, making it clear that she wasn't happy. And at that point, that's the only thing that matters. If Paige isn't happy, he owes her an apology. He has reached out. He has apologized. Case closed. Paige seems happy to move on, as she said to Gary on the bus earlier today. So that situation is at an end. We'll see if fans want to continue discussing it. There are obviously points to discuss as part of a larger theme, but it's one of those, and it's a shame because Triple H walked into that room and asked why there were no women journalists in the room, and that's something that we need to be looking at to see how we can encourage and help us discover the really talented people in the wrestling field who also happen to be women. So he's raising that point there, and then he unfortunately takes away from that point with the joke that he made. So I would rather focus on that part now that the apology has been made. Triple H has been proactive, an apology has been made. As far as I'm concerned, that is the case closed.
Let's talk about a situation that we probably haven't heard the last of. This past weekend at Impact Hard to Kill, Tessa Blanchard became the first ever woman to hold the Impact World Championship, and really the first woman to ever hold a World Championship for a major company. We know that back in the day, China was a Intercontinental Champion, but as far as the major companies and holding their top title, Tessa is the first woman to do it. And the night before Time to Kill, a Twitter storm erupted where women in the wrestling business were accusing Tessa of some past racially bigoted, I guess, behavior and some racially charged actions during her time over in Japan a couple years ago. And those reports and stories were subsequently confirmed by not only other women in the business, but also by the woman who Tessa supposedly was derogatory towards. There was some name calling and supposedly she spat on the woman, and that was confirmed by the victim herself. And we saw a lot of women kind of jumping on and piling on people, even like Chelsea Green, people with WWE or NXT affiliations, people that are working in New Japan and out on the indies, really kind of coming forward and backing up this story that, Tessa may not have behaved the best in the past couple years in her interactions with different companies. And what I want to talk about here is, if this is true, obviously it's unacceptable. It can't be tolerated just the way that you treat other human beings. The stories that came out, if those were in fact true, obviously, we know that is unacceptable. And Tessa she hasn't made a public statement, but she did kind of quasi-address it in her speech after the match on Sunday, where she said basically that not everyone is perfect, and she didn't really address it specifically, but just kind of made allusions to not everybody's perfect, but people grow and they change over time, etc. But what I wanted to talk about is, and I've seen this a lot, here in the States, that, with professional athletes, when a college athlete is getting ready to be drafted, in the NBA or the NFL, and the night of the draft, someone will dig up tweets from that person from when they were a freshman in high school that maybe had some type of, racial term or something that wouldn't put them in the best light, and they blast it out on social media, the night of that person getting, drafted or turning pro. And my question is, why do we see this pattern of people want to speak up and step out, maybe the night before or the night of, when they know someone is getting ready to have this big professional achievement? Most people thought that going into the event, Tessa Blanchard was going to win the Impact World Championship. And again, not excusing her behavior if it is in fact true, but I always get a little bit uncertain, and I kind of take things with a grain of salt when it seems like people and victims want to speak up the day before they know that this person is going to have some type of big achievement or is going to get some type of recognition. And so I just wanted to get your opinion about that, about in this world of social media, where people can speak up and really say whatever they want, at any time. And again, not to disregard the victim, and like I said, if the actions are true, obviously those were unacceptable by Tessa. But what do you make of this trend where people seem to only want to speak up right before something important is or something high level is about to happen to the perpetrator?
Well, this situation has a lot of layers to it. Firstly, it was people speaking up for someone else, which makes it a lot more difficult to say this person is guilty. Because the evidence being produced here is secondhand. The woman in question has come forward and has essentially said that the situation is settled. Now, whether or not that is someone trying to keep their head down, like I say, there are many aspects to this. In many ways, she has confirmed that it has happened, whereas Tessa has not. But Tessa has not really been involved in the public eye since, despite being literally in that match, winning the world title, and the speech that she did afterwards. There was a lack of communication. There were press conferences being cancelled. There were media appearances cancelled. They were keeping her away from scrutiny. It wasn't until a couple of hours, maybe half a day before the match, that she knew she would be winning, even though she had been told previously that would be happening. So Impact certainly felt there was enough to stop and think. They did then decide to go ahead, though. When you're talking about the trend, as it were, of this, it's just people being more in the public eye, I feel. I've talked about a hatred of success on this podcast many times before. One of the reasons the big names are always scrutinized more harshly, the smaller names can get away with more and so on and so forth. The benefit of the doubt is not given to the top names, celebrity, sport, wrestling. Doesn't matter what field it is. If you're one of the top names, you will be scrutinized much more harshly. Now, these are things that scrutiny is deserved for. This is something that is unfortunately in the public interest to know. So it's a good thing that this got out, even if it just means that an apology can happen, even if it's behind closed doors, as it was with Triple H and Paige, that an apology can happen and people can grow as people. We don't want to live in a world where we look at someone and say, you will always be judged for this no matter who you are right now. If she has learned from this, if she has spoken with the person who suffered at her hands, and an apology has been given and accepted, then there is growth of a person. In which case, we've got to let her get on with it, and we've got to move on, because the person who suffered from it has moved on. We have to take the lead of the person who is on the receiving end. We can't tell someone how to feel. We can't take offense for someone for something that happened only to that person. Now, whether it's happened to other people, it's up to them whether they want to come forward. But at the moment, what I'm aware of is that this one situation happened. There was discussions between the two women, and they settled it. I don't know what it means that they settled it, but according to the woman who was racially abused, it is settled. You'll note I'm not using names, because obviously this is still a situation whereby all of the facts are not present. So out of respect for the people involved, yes, Tessa is the person we're discussing here. I can't avoid that because she's now the Impact World Champion. She's too big not to mention. But it really is a situation we have to take the lead from the person on the receiving end. If they have chosen not to push forward, then we cannot push forward.
Do you think that it is a detriment to future people who may speak out about, wrongs that have been done to them by anyone, in the business or really in any walk of life, but, we'll stick to the wrestling business here. Do you think that it's a detriment to them coming forward in the future? Because, like I said, just as a fan, my initial instinct is always when someone comes forward with allegations about someone, right before they have a big match or right before, they're going to be crowned a champion, I'm always inclined to kind of go with the benefit of the doubt of the accused, because to me it's like, well, they're only saying that about them because they're getting ready to have their big night, or maybe that person's jealous, or they're upset, they don't like this person, they don't like that this person getting all this attention or having all this success. So do you think that it's a detriment to future people being able to speak up, that we seem to, more likely than not, we hear about these accusations right before a big event in the accused life, as opposed to this victim stepping out and saying that this happened to me right when it happened. And of course it's always the victim's choice about when to come forward, and I know that this can be a touchy subject, but again, like I said, it just seems to me like that would deter people from wanting to step out and make claims against someone, because in the public eye, like I said, at least for me, I always think a little bit less of the accusations when it's met around the same time that something big is getting ready to happen to the person that they're accusing of doing something wrong.
Ultimately, when it comes out, shouldn't matter, because until there is fact and some sort of investigation has happened, we should be giving all parties the benefit of the doubt. I know that doesn't happen. Obviously, ideal world situation, we all just let justice happen however it happens, and we don't prejudge people. But we're human beings. We prejudge. We have confirmation bias. We have unconscious prejudice. It's things we can fight, but it's not things we can fight if we're not aware of them. So when you talk about being more willing to give someone the benefit of the doubt based on the time that it came out, that for me is just a form of unconscious confirmation bias. You are more inclined to believe that based on that situation because you already believe that the information coming out at that time is a sign of guilt on the person bringing it out. It shouldn't matter, but it does. And what we found in this whole situation is that people who already didn't like Tessa believe bad about Tessa, and people who do believe good about Tessa believe good about Tessa.
Right.
It's just reinforced what people already believed, already perceived. And we saw that very much when it came to Paige and Triple H as well. If people were more inclined to be on Triple H's side, as it were, obviously they weren't actual sides because Triple H is in agreement it was a bad joke, but if they were naturally supportive of him, they were saying, oh, it's a joke, why is she offended? And in some cases getting quite harsh against Paige, it should be pointed out. Whereas if they were more inclined to be pro-Paige, then they were more likely to be saying, oh, she's right to be offended, this is this, this is this. At some point, we all have to take a step back, find out what's actually happening, and again, take the lead from the people involved.
Well, let's get back to some more positive news. AEW announced this week that they have gotten an extension for AEW Dynamite on TNT through the year 2023. AEW got almost 1 million viewers for Dynamite last week and have obviously shown enough for their cable partner that TNT wants them on their network for the next 3 years. What did you make of this extension? Is this a sign that AEW is here to stay? Is this more of just kind of a show of support by TNT? Obviously, we know that with contracts, most time companies can have an easy out. They can, doesn't necessarily mean that it's ironclad that AEW will definitely be on TNT through 2023, no matter what the ratings say or anything like that. Obviously, you would have to think that TNT would have some leverage there. So is this more of just a show of support by TNT for what AEW has done up to this point, or do you think that it's a sign that AEW is here to stay and that we're going to see Dynamite, through the year 2023 and beyond?
We've talked on this podcast a lot about AEW and the ratings and everything like that, and we've talked about the fact that even though some people, for example, Cody Rhodes, may be disappointed if the ratings dip below NXT, the actual network and Tony Khan are very happy. AEW could lose to NXT for the next 5-6 years and still be considered a success. They are a very successful company at this moment with a smallish roster, with very low overheads compared. They are doing very, very good. And with the money of Tony Khan, they can operate at a loss for years and it's not really a problem for them. So there's that. It is considered to be a very strong draw for the network. The network are very, very happy with the show that they've been given. And as I said before, the whole Wednesday Night Raw is a marketing ploy. They were never expected to come even close to the numbers that they have achieved so far. And as when it comes to spikes and dips, they have been settling into a rhythm of about 600,000 to 700,000. That's a great achievement from the standing start that they had. Everyone is happy. Everyone wants to see more AEW on their TV screens. And yeah, this is a show of support, but it's a show of support based on the idea that this is lucrative, this is worthwhile, and this is worth investing in.
Well, AEW's prime competition on Wednesday nights is, of course, NXT, and NXT UK actually put on a takeover event this past weekend, which you were a part of and present for. Again, if you go on Sportskeeda.com and on our YouTube channel, Tom's got all kinds of content, interviews that he had, meeting the different superstars, and was there for the event. So just give us a little bit of a peek from your eyes and from your experience down there at NXT UK. What was the event like? What did you take away from it? I know, from seeing your videos and things on Twitter, it looked like a great event with a really live crowd. You could almost feel the energy coming through the screen whenever you saw some of your fan videos that you posted from the event.
UK crowds are so loud and just so thoroughly entertained. There was a spot when Tyler Bate was just spinning Jordan Devlin around, and about halfway through all the fans decided, you know what, we're going to get up, we're going to get really loud, and we're just going to keep this going. And moments like that are wonderful. You look at probably the video that I posted that got viewed the most, and I hope you will have seen it. the shush. Did you
Yes.
see that one?
Yeah.
You're never going to get that in an American crowd. When Walter's about to slap someone in the chest and the entire crowd just goes shh. And it all goes silent. It's fantastic. So I initially went down. I live in Blackpool, so I didn't have to travel. I was just coming home. But I went down on the Friday. That was actually the first time I've ever met Gary Cassidy. Our Slick Scotsman. We live quite far apart, so this was a great opportunity to actually meet the man and get a little bit drunk. So we just met up in a Witherspoons after the wonderful recommendation of Drew McIntyre and No Filter. Met up, had a few drinks, and got to know each other a little bit, which is important. I work with this man. I talk to him pretty much every single day. And he is our head interviewer here at Sportskeeda. He's been doing great work. Go check it out. And then initially it was only going to be him in the media. He had been allocated a ticket by the PR firm that oversee. Because it sold out so quickly, and I sort of fought ahead and thought, you know what, just in case I'm not able to get a ticket through the media, or they only want one person for media, which is their right, I bought a ticket. My friend and I went down together, and we had a wonderful balcony seat. We could see everything. It was a great angle. Loved every second of it. So I went down on the Friday. The Saturday morning, we met up and did interviews. Jordan Devlin, Eddie Dennis, and who else was it? It is so difficult to keep track. It was Imperium. Walter tried to steal my phone. That was a thing. And it's so wonderful doing this. It's these moments when you realise that they're still actual people. You know, once you break down those barriers, we're still talking to actual people here. And we had William Regal on that day. We were supposed to be finished by 10:30, but my word, William Regal can talk. A 20-minute round table turned into 2 hours listening to this man who has so much to share. I was not bored for a second, even though sometimes he would tell the same story twice. Bless. I didn't feel I needed to go to his spoken word thing afterwards because, you know, don't need to now. Afterwards, a lot of the journalists and the PR team, we went to watch a football match. Just at a local pub. Again, had a few drinks, got to know each other a little better. Got to know so many great people in wrestling media, which is always a real highlight of these events. The Sunday, same thing. Early morning, down to the hotel to meet up with more wrestlers. So this time it was Gallus. We ended up doing a 9-person handshake. I don't know why, but Joe Coffey was determined, and that man gets what he wants. We had Kaylee Ray, who remembered me from the last time we had an interview together. And he's just such a delight to talk to. So joyful. We had the interview with what I'm referring to as Mustache Storm. So it was Mustache Mountain and Tony Storm.
Nice.
They were talking about some of their aspirations and what they want to do over the next few months and the year. How excited they might be if they end up in a Royal Rumble, which I am really hoping for. And then closed with Piper Niven, who went into quite a lot of detail about the recent diagnosis for Bell's palsy. And another person who just a joy. She had a lot of pins and things on her leather jacket. One of them was Spyro the Dragon, and one of them was Red Dwarf, which was a very popular sitcom in the UK, but I don't think it really translated to the US. It was very funny here. I very much enjoyed it. So we were just chatting about that until I remembered that we were supposed to be conducting an interview, and snapped back into attention. And then after that was the roundtable with Triple H, and of course the show. My word, just tremendous quality top to bottom. Bate Devlin, Jordan Devlin told us it was going to be match of the year. So far it is definitely match of the year. And there was something for everyone. The ladder match was just pure carnage. Walter chops like a machine. And we had no idea that the Undisputed Era were there. No idea whatsoever. Hell of a show. Hell of a show.
Yeah, definitely. If you can check that out. I don't know if it's been posted on the network yet, but if you can check that out, because I know a lot of people, especially in the U.S., don't always get to check out NXT UK. But check that event out if you can. It's definitely one worth watching. Before we get out of here, I do want to make one quick note that just came across our timeline here. The WWE reported that Rocky Johnson, the Soul Man, and most of the fans probably know him more as the father of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, has passed away. He was 74 years old, and it just came across the timeline about 10 minutes ago that The Rock's father, Rocky Johnson, has unfortunately passed away. So we obviously offer our condolences to The Rock and his family and the entire Johnson clan, and that Samoan family, that has a lot of members like Roman Reigns and, the Usos, that are all cousins and family members of all that same ilk of the Samoan dynasty, if you will. So obviously, all of us at Sportskeeda, want to offer our condolences to them on the passing of Rocky Johnson.
Yeah, I completely agree with that and would like to offer my own condolences. It did come up during this podcast. I'm glad you brought it up. I unfortunately have not had much chance to see Rocky Johnson matches, but I do have access to the network. I'm sure I can find something on there, and I will undoubtedly do so in tribute.
Absolutely. And we appreciate everyone listening to this podcast. Make sure that you are checking out Tom on Twitter at Colohue. You can follow me on Twitter at Korey Gunz. You can also check out Tom's YouTube channel. He has his own YouTube channel up on YouTube, in addition to the Sportskeeda YouTube channel that you can subscribe to as well. And we want to thank everybody for tuning in. Last week's show with me and Tom was our most watched and most listened to episode that we have done thus far. So me and Tom would like to thank everybody for tuning into that one, and we hope that you stay with us and continue to check us out each week on Dropkick DiSKussions. Check out Sportskeeda.com for all of your latest wrestling news and rumors. And we hope to see you guys with us again next week when we will preview the Royal Rumble. So we will see you guys for that show next week right here on Dropkick DiSKussions.